Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is another edition of Pinch Hit Friday. Today I've got a quick lesson, really more reflective than anything else, just about the topics of stress and recovery as it relates to, not just training, but, how we optimize high-level performance day in and day out. And I think it's a very confusing world of, all the recovery initiatives that are out there. And I always kind of tell this story in jest, but I think it's a good one. But early on in my career, right after I left grad school, I worked at a private facility and they offered a group yoga class at 6 a.m. So I would often joke with, a coworker of mine. It's like, wow, people are waking up early to come in here and de-stress. Like what's more de-stressing than sleeping? To me, that's the ultimate recovery. And obviously, I say this facetiously, there's tons more benefits to group exercise, like yoga and all that stuff. There's camaraderie that comes with it. And obviously there's a ton of mobility and core stability benefits and things like that. So there were more rationales for it, but it did beg the question is like, why are people chasing recovery initiatives so often when really they could be looking more upstream and actually talking about stressors? So the other day I was actually reading an article, it was actually really geared more towards like busy moms, and the author was proposing like the need to do more earthing and more meditation. And it's interesting. My wife is a super busy mom herself, and the idea of going to a yoga class drives her bonkers. She's not patient enough to get through it. She doesn't necessarily enjoy that modality. And it really feels to her much more like one more stressor that she needs to add to her schedule. So for her, that might not be the right fit. But often, we get these questions from athletes about, hey, obviously I mentioned earthing and meditation, but, what about sauna? What about cold plunges? What about, a combination of the two, contrasts? What supplements can I take? Is massage good for me? There's all these different things that people are asking about in order to try to optimize recovery. And what I often say to athletes is that the best recovery strategy is actually the removal of stressors that don't drive favorable adaptation. So what that really means is there are stressors that you put on your system, things like training, in a weight room, or going out and doing, speed and agility work, or, working through baseball skill work, taking ground balls, throwing bullpens, taking batting practice. These are stressors where you actually, adapt favorably. In other words, you come back better at your sport. You come back stronger, assuming the amount of stress was correct. You go out and hit till your hands bleed and wind up with a hamate fracture. That's not a good stressor. That's too much. But for the most part, we take part in these initiatives and we actually, super compensate. We adapt and we come back better than we previously were. And that's how the entire training process works. But at the other end of the spectrum, you have stressors that don't create favorable adaptation on the back end, right? That could be, a fight with your significant other, an argument with your girlfriend, right? It could be poor nutrition, right? Eating a bunch of sugar and fried foods. It's taking in these things that create an inflammatory response in your body that are really a stressor, when in reality you could be eating nutritious foods that nourish you and optimize recovery. Could be staying up late to play video games, or really deprive yourself of the single best recovery option out there, and that's sleep. It's what is naturally made for us to help in that regard. So I always remind folks is before you try to add something that may help, start by removing the things that definitely hurt. So take a step back, look at your full day before you start to try to add things that are going to consume more time in your schedule. Before you go and, add a cold plunge, or, do a 30-minute compressive, kind of intervention with one of those recovery devices. Before you add meditation or earthing or sauna or whatever it may be, you spend money on supplements. All these things might be helpful, but the number one thing you can do is think upstream about what are the bad stressors in my life? What can I remove before I need to go and add something else? And I think this is really, really overlooked in today's world of, health and human performance. But I think it's absolutely game changing for young athletes to realize that they're probably adding a lot of things, to their overall schedule that are probably creating unfavorable adaptations on the back end. And that's why they need to search out, more recovery initiatives. So just some food for thought for today. Probably applies much, much more at the higher levels of sport, when athletes are getting pulled in a lot of different directions. They have family responsibilities and more significant travel and media responsibilities. But there are a lot of things that young athletes can learn from this, just in terms of optimizing a lifestyle so that they're not creating more stressors than they would encounter, beyond the field or the weight room. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend. This episode is brought to you by First Form, an awesome supplement company with a comprehensive product offering that I enjoy using myself and with our athletes. Beyond the broad product line they offer, I also love First Form's commitment to ensuring that their products are the highest quality. They meet NSF certified for sport standards for both consistency and purity. Their Formula One protein powder is the best tasting option I've had in over 20 years in the fitness industry, and they've got several great flavors to choose from. I also lean on their creatine monohydrate to support hard training, their collagen for joint health, their magnesium to help with sleep quality, and their fish oil for a variety of health benefits. Our daughters and I also share a love for their high protein meat sticks, which have become a big hit in the Cressey household for school lunches and on the go protein options as we head to gymnastics and softball practices. Of course, First Form products also have been really popular with our athletes at Cressey Sports Performance, and they're used by some of the top performing athletes and most recognizable sports franchises in the world. Above all, the people at First Form are top notch, and that's a rarity in an often unethical business. First Form is dedicated to empowering people on their fitness journeys, and that dedication is matched by only their unwavering commitment to exceptional quality and unparalleled customer service. Check them out for yourself at www.firstform.com/Cressey. That's 1stphom.com/CRESSEY and get free shipping on your order of $75 or more. Additionally, they're offering amazing 10% more than your money back guarantee if you're not fully satisfied with your purchase. Again, that's firstform.com/Cressey to get free shipping on your order of $75 or more.